Okay, guys, the fog here is something else. Like, I am standing in the middle of Tudor London right now, and I can barely see 20 feet in front of me. And my hands are already shaking, and I have been on the ground for maybe 10 minutes. I thought I was prepared for this one. I did my research, I gave myself the whole pep talk. Jesse, you're a professional, you've seen things, you can handle it. And then Tudor London just looked me dead in the eyes and said, absolutely not. The streets are narrow and dark, even with morning coming in. The buildings lean toward each other overhead like they're whispering secrets. And there's this feeling pressing down on everything that I cannot shake. This collective holding of breath, like the whole city is bracing for something, because it is. It's May 19th, 1536. And today is the day Anne Boleyn is executed. And I am right here standing in it, and honestly, I was not ready. I don't think you can be ready for this one. So buckle up because this trip is going to wreck us both. Let me walk you through who Anne Boleyn actually was while I'm moving. Because if you only know her as the one who lost her head, then you are missing the entire earthquake of her story. And I refuse to let that happen. Anne Boleyn was not just a queen. She was a revolution wearing a gable hood. Born into a well-connected English noble family, educated partly in France where she absorbed this sharp, sophisticated, intellectually confident way of moving through the world that the English court had genuinely never encountered in a woman before, she came back different, magnetic in a way that contemporaries struggled to describe without contradicting themselves. Not conventionally beautiful by Tudor standards, they said, but impossible to look away from. Dark eyes, dark hair, like this fierce, alive intelligence that came off her like heat. And Henry VIII, the most powerful man in England, the man who had been married to Catherine of Aragon for over 20 years, saw Anne Boleyn and completely lost his mind. He pursued her for years, writing her these embarrassing, desperate love letters. From a king, guys. A king was writing love letters like a teenager. And when the Pope refused to annul his marriage to Catherine so he could marry Anne, Henry did something that still reverberates through history today. He broke England away from the Roman Catholic Church entirely and made himself the head of a brand new church, the Church of England, because of Anne. She became his queen in 1533, crowned with full ceremony at Westminster Abbey, and she gave birth to a daughter that autumn, a little girl named Elizabeth. And then 3 years later, she is going to die on a scaffold inside the Tower of London. The speed of that fall is one of the most disturbing things I've ever had to sit with across all my time traveling, and I am standing in the city where it is happening right now, and I cannot get my heart rate under control. The smell hits me every single time, and I will never be ready for it. Not ever. Not once. Tudor London in the early morning is a full sensory assault. And I say that with absolutely zero exaggeration. The Thames is close. I can hear it and I can absolutely smell it. And the Thames in 1536 is not a river so much as it is an open sewer that also happens to be the city's main highway and its primary source of drinking water, which tells you everything you need to know about average life expectancy here. The smell is this layered, complex, genuinely overwhelming combination of river water and rot, and animal waste and chimney smoke, and damp wood and something underneath it all that I can only describe as the smell of a city that has never once been cleaned. And horses everywhere, their waste steaming on the cobblestones in the cold morning air. Pigs wandering loose down side lanes. The buildings themselves seem to sweat. The timber frames and plaster absorbing centuries of rain and smoke and life until the architecture itself has a smell. And the sound is extraordinary too. This layered medieval symphony of cartwheels on uneven stone and distant church bells and dogs barking, and somewhere a baby crying and traders beginning to call even this early. Their voices bouncing off the close walls of the narrow streets. I am standing in the middle of all of this trying to take it in and also trying not to breathe too deeply. And I keep thinking, she woke up this morning and smelled exactly this. Anne Boleyn woke up inside the Tower of London this morning and heard these same bells and knew. She knew today was the day. I cannot imagine carrying that knowledge through a morning. I genuinely cannot. The city is moving, and the mood is wrong, and I notice it the moment I start walking with the crowd. There is the usual texture of a Tudor London morning. The noise, the movement, the relentless business of survival happening on every corner. But running underneath all of it is something else entirely. A current. A tension pulling everyone in one direction, toward the tower. And I fall in with the crowd because that is my whole strategy here. Blend in, move with people, don't draw attention, don't make eye contact too long. And as I'm moving, I'm watching faces and picking up fragments of conversation I'm absolutely not supposed to be hearing. And what I'm getting is this uncomfortable, deeply human mess of emotions that honestly I was not expecting. There are people here who are glad, genuinely glad, quite relieved even, people loyal to Catherine of Aragon, who believed with everything in them that Anne was a scheming, ambitious woman who seduced a king and dragged England into religious chaos for her own advancement. For those people today is justice arriving. There are people moving in that constant low-level fear that seems to be the baseline emotional state of everyone in Tudor England. Because when a crowned queen can fall in 17 days, what does that say about the safety of anyone? And there are people who are grieving, silently, carefully, keeping their faces completely neutral. Because to grieve publicly for someone the king has condemned as a traitor is to paint a target directly on yourself. I watch a woman near me press her lips together very hard and stare straight ahead, and I understand exactly what she is doing. She's keeping herself alive by keeping her face still. That detail is going to stay with me for a very long time. And here's what is tearing me apart as I walk, and I need you to understand this before we get any closer to the tower. The charges against Anne Boleyn were almost certainly fabricated. Not exaggerated, not misinterpreted, fabricated. The accusations included adultery with 5 different men, including her own brother George, and plotting the king's death. Historians have spent centuries examining the evidence, and the overwhelming consensus is that the case was constructed at terrifying speed by Thomas Cromwell, Henry's chief minister, who had his own political reasons for wanting Anne gone. Some historians believe Henry himself drove it. Anne had miscarried multiple times after Elizabeth's birth, including what appeared to be a male child in January 1536, just 4 months before her arrest. She hadn't given him the son he needed, and he had already moved on. Jane Seymour was waiting. Henry will marry Jane Seymour 11 days after Anne's execution. 11 days. And I want you to hold that number, because it tells you everything about what this really was. She was arrested on May 2nd. The men accused alongside her were executed on May 17th, and today, May 19th, is her turn. 17 days from queen to scaffold. I keep counting it, and it keeps being 17, and it keeps being monstrous. The machinery of Tudor power, when it decided to move, moved like a blade. Fast, clean, and completely merciless. I am inside the Tower precinct now, and everything shifts the moment I pass through those walls. The outside city had noise and movement, and at least the illusion of normal life carrying on. In here, the atmosphere is compressed, formal, suffocating in a way I feel physically. And Tower Green is a relatively small enclosed space, the gray stone walls rising on all sides, the white tower visible above everything, and the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, sitting quietly at one end like it already knows what it is about to receive. The scaffold has been erected in the open space, a low wooden platform, maybe a foot off the ground, draped in black, and the sight of it makes my stomach drop in a way I was not prepared for, even knowing it would be here. There are maybe 1,000 people gathered inside, nobles, officials, tower residents, designated witnesses, and the crowd is quiet in a way that outdoor Tudor crowds almost never are. People standing close together, speaking in low voices, watching the scaffold with this fixed, unblinking attention that has nothing celebratory in it whatsoever. I find a position where I can see without drawing attention, and I stand very still. And I wait, and I keep telling myself, I am fine. I am not fine. And I haven't been fine since I walked through those gates. Anne comes out and I stop breathing completely. She walks through the door of the tower accompanied by her 4 ladies in waiting, and the first thing that hits me before anything else, before I even register what she is wearing or how she looks, is her composure. I have thought about this moment so many times in my research, and I still was not ready for the reality of it. She is 28 or 29 years old, and she is walking toward her own death for crimes everyone in this courtyard knows she did not commit, and she is composed in a way that makes no sense and breaks my heart simultaneously. Her face is pale but steady. The chronicler Edward Hall writes about her bearing. Other contemporary accounts use words like serene, controlled, dignified. And I am watching her cross Tower Green, and I am watching her ladies walking behind her, and 2 of them are visibly trembling, and one keeps her eyes fixed on the ground, and Anne is looking straight ahead, clear-eyed, walking toward the scaffold like she has decided exactly how she is going to do this, and nothing is going to take that decision from her. In a situation where absolutely everything else has been stripped away, her bearing is the one thing left that is entirely hers. I'm crying, and I genuinely don't care who sees it. She mounts the scaffold steps and she speaks, and the crowd goes completely silent to hear her. Her speech is careful and measured and heartbreaking in its carefulness. She does not proclaim her innocence because to contradict the king's justice out loud from a scaffold would put everyone she loves at risk, and she knew that she was protecting people even then, in her last minutes on earth. She asked the crowd to pray for her. She speaks of the king with formal respect. She commends her soul to God. And then she asks those present to judge the best of her, not to exonerate her, not to rage at what is happening, just to remember her charitably. It is such a human, vulnerable request, and it is coming from a woman standing on a scaffold, and it completely undoes me. And then, and this is the detail that I read in my research that made me put my notes down and just sit there. Before she kneels, she makes a quiet, dark joke to the executioner that she has heard he is good at his work and that she has a little neck, and witnesses recorded that she touched her own throat lightly when she said it. She was making jokes about her own neck, on that scaffold. That specific detail tells you more about who Anne Boleyn was than any portrait or any history book ever could. She kept her wit until the very last second. She kept herself. She kneels upright, not over a block, because this is a French-style sword execution, the one mercy she had requested and been granted. A swordsman brought specially from Calais because death by sword was considered faster and more merciful than the axe. And her ladies step forward to blindfold her. And I watch her hands in those final moments, and they are trembling slightly, the only visible crack in the extraordinary composure she has held across this entire courtyard. And she begins to pray aloud, voice steady, and the executioner has hidden the sword beneath the straw on the scaffold floor, so she would not flinch at the sight of it. This one small tactical mercy offered inside something utterly merciless. And then it is over. One strike, instantly. Witnesses were unanimous that she did not suffer, and the crowd goes silent for a beat that feels eternal, the loudest silence I have ever stood inside in my life. And then a voice calls out that it is done, and from somewhere beyond the tower walls, a cannon fires, the sound rolling out across the river and the city, carrying the news to Hampton Court, where Henry is waiting. He goes hunting when he hears. He goes hunting. On I want to throw something, and I have nowhere to put that rage, so I just stand here in the cold and hold it. The aftermath moves with an efficiency that is its own kind of horror, and I am watching it, and I do not want to be watching it. There is no prepared coffin, nobody arranged for one, and that specific detail, that administrative indifference, that not even a box was ready for the Queen of England, is one of the things that sits with me the heaviest. Her ladies wrap her remains in white cloth, and she is carried into the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, right there on Tower Green, and buried in an unmarked grave before the altar. No marker, no name. A Queen of England put in the ground without her name on it. She will lie there for over 300 years until Queen Victoria orders excavations in the 1870s, and they find what they believe are her remains, and finally, Finally give her a memorial. I stood at that memorial in the modern day before I took this trip. I stood there and read her name carved into the stone and felt something I couldn't name. And now I am standing here in 1536 at the exact spot where that grave will be. And the continuity of it is sitting on my chest like a stone, and I cannot move. I just stand here in the cold morning, inside the Tower of London, and let it land completely. I am making my way back through the city now, and London is carrying on the way cities always do. Indifferent and unstoppable, and a little cruel in their indifference. The traders are trading, the Thames is moving. I can hear children laughing somewhere down a lane, and the sound is almost unbearable against everything I just witnessed. And I keep thinking about Elizabeth, Anne Boleyn's daughter, who is 2 years old right now on this May morning. 2 years old, about to be stripped of her title, declared illegitimate by the same parliament that declared her legitimate 3 years ago. Her mother's name to be systematically erased from official record as if Anne Boleyn never existed. This little girl is going to grow up without her mother, without even being allowed to speak her mother's name safely in many company, and she is going to become Queen Elizabeth I. She is going to reign for 45 years. She is going to defeat the Spanish Armada. She is going to preside over one of the greatest flowerings of art and literature and national identity in English history. The age that gives us Shakespeare, that gives us a vision of England as sovereign and extraordinary. Every single moment of that reign runs through Anne, Elizabeth's power, Elizabeth's brilliance, Elizabeth's very existence on that throne. All of it is inseparable from the woman who was buried without a coffin this morning. A history tried so hard and so fast to erase Anne Boleyn, and Anne Boleyn simply refused to stay erased. Her daughter made sure of it. Don't at me, but that might be the most powerful mother-daughter story in all of recorded history. And that is what I want to leave you with, because some trips demand a real takeaway, and this is one of them. Anne Boleyn did not survive. That is the truth, and it deserves to sit uncomfortably and not be softened into a tidy lesson. She was 28 or 29 years old, and she was killed by the machinery of political convenience and male power, condemned by a process so fast and so corrupt that even people who despised her knew something was wrong. The man who had loved her obsessively enough to reshape a nation's entire religion in order to have her went hunting the day she died. The distance between those two facts is one of the most disturbing things in all of history if you actually sit with it long enough. But I keep coming back to that scaffold, the composure, the dark joke about her little neck, the quiet request to be thought of charitably. She walked into that moment with everything stripped from her, and she chose how she moved through it anyway. She kept her bearing. She kept her wit. She kept herself right until the very last second, entirely and completely herself. And then her daughter grew up and became the most powerful woman in the world and never let England forget who her mother was. I think Anne knew, standing here in the cold fog of Tudor London with cannon smoke drifting somewhere above the rooftops, I genuinely believe she knew her daughter would survive. I think that was what kept her steady when she walked across Tower Green this morning. I think that was the thing she held on to. I am walking out of this city emotionally wrecked in a way that is going to take me days to shake, and I do not regret a single second of it because some history needs to be stood in. Some stories need to be felt up close and not read about from a safe, comfortable distance. Anne Boleyn is one of them. She deserves to be grieved properly, not observed. So if you made it to the end of this one, drop in the comments what moment hit you hardest. I read every single comment, and I genuinely want to know what landed for you. And vote below for where we go next. I am torn between going back to Tudor England to see Anne at the absolute height of her power, the coronation of 1533, on the celebrations before any of the shadow falls, or heading to Paris during the French Revolution when the whole world is on fire. Let me know. Subscribe if you are new here because this is what we do. History the way it actually felt. In your chest, in your gut, right where it belongs. I will see you in the next era.